You're live.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, Council, it's 5 p.m. and I will call our meeting for Monday, September 27th, 2021 to order by reading our land acknowledgement first. For more than 15,000 years, the First Nations walked upon and cared for the lands we now call home. Anishinaabek, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and many others who cared for their families and communities the way we now care for ours. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and respects all of the nation-to-nation agreements that have formed relationships with the original inhabitants of Turtle Island. The reality of our shared history, the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community, and seeks to continue empowering expressions of pride among all of the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better, to continue to recognize, learn, and grow in friendship and in community, nation to nation. And with that, I will look for a motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting. And the motion reads that the content of the council agenda for September 27, 2021 be adopted as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Berman, seconded by Councillor Doherty. Any additions, council? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations? Deputy Mayor.
I apologize. I do have a declaration, but I also failed to make a comment under adoption of agenda prior to it being passed.
All right, go ahead. Let's start off with the agenda item, and then we'll deal with your conflict.
Okay, thank you. The agenda item, I just wanted to make reference to it now so that if there was anyone who was waiting to hear the motion read in, that they don't sit for a couple of hours to find out that the matter is being deferred. But my motion specific to waste management that falls under item 11.1 specifically, I'm going to ask that that item be deferred to our first council meeting of October, which would be October the 18th, 2021.
Okay, thank you for the heads up. And then on your conflict, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. My conflict is specific to the item that is under 9.1 Standing Committee Report. Specifically, the item is 9.1.2. And it is the resolution HER-057-2021. And I declared a conflict previous at our development operations meeting, and I'm doing so again this evening as I was directly involved with the subject property that is the subject of this particular permit.
So noted, Deputy Mayor, and I think you will, we'll just, on that one particular item 9.1.2, I think you're capable or don't have a conflict in terms of the actual resolution to adopt the minutes, because that item has been taken out in the resolution to be dealt with separately. So thank you for the heads up.
Thank you.
Are there any other declarations tonight, Council? Seeing none, if you find yourself in a place as we progress, please feel free to let us know and the general nature thereof. And that brings us to adoption of minutes from our prior meeting. The resolution reads that the minutes of the regular council meeting held September 20, 2021 be approved as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Berman and Councillor McLeod. Are there any errors or omissions, Council? Seeing none, I will call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Is there any business arising from the previous minutes tonight, Council? Seeing none, that brings us to community announcements, and I will start with you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I do have a few announcements, so with your indulgence. The first two matters actually relate specifically to the County of Simcoe, but rather than wait until the county report, I thought I'd bring them forward simply that they maybe have a broader interest. The first is, and this actually has been the subject of conversation around our table, and there have been members of the public who have, in deputing to our council or to a committee, have referenced the work that's going on at the county, and therefore they may have an interest in attending or participating virtually. The matter I'm referring to is referred to as the MCR, or Municipal Comprehensive Review. On Tuesday, October the 5th, 2021, there are two sessions. The first is at 1:30 to 3 p.m. The second is at 4 to 5:30 p.m. You do need to register through the county and through the Eventbrite system. And bear with me, I'm just going to pull up here on my phone a brief overview. And I forgot my reading glasses, so again, my apologies and bear with me. The first of these sessions will contribute to the process of determining how much growth can be accommodated in the existing settlement areas within the county and whether additional land is needed for residential and employment area purposes to the 2051 planning horizon. And of course, the MCR is a collaborative approach. It's mandated through the province, and it's to help bring the county's official plan in alignment with the provincial growth plan, places to growth plan, Greater Golden Horseshoe, etc. So for those who have expressed interest as it relates to growth within our community, the impact of water, etc., and have an interest, please look for that on the county website, and please note that you need to register. The second item that I just would like to mention as it relates to the county, today was our waste collection in the community, and if you're driving about, you'll notice that there are yard bags out at the curb. October the 4th and October the 18th. So there's a week in between, but October the 4th and 18th are the first 2 weeks that there is yard waste collection within the town of Collingwood. And again, you can get these dates and additional information on the app or the calendar that's mailed out annually. And on the 25th, the week of the 25th of October, is the fall or annual battery collection. And this is news to, or good news for our chief, our fire chief, and that this is a perfect opportunity to check your alarms, check your smoke detectors, et cetera, swap out the batteries, put the batteries in the collection bag, and throw them at the curb for safe collection. And the last thing I just would like to mention that I mentioned last week, tonight is the first night of 5 for Collingwood's very first fashion week, being hosted downtown by a number of merchants. And if you're interested in additional information on specific venues, etc., please check out collingwoodfashionweek.com. I know that there was one I saw, I forget the evening, but you had to register in advance. It was being hosted at Black Bellows, and it was a male fashion show of the very popular Saks underwear. And so I'm anticipating that that will be a popular event. I was somewhat offended I was not invited to participate, but nonetheless, what can you say? And my last announcement is that it only seems like yesterday on a Monday night that we were chomping at the bits to finish our meeting so that we could get home to watch Game 7 between Montreal and Toronto. Toronto's back in Montreal tonight, but it is only an exhibition game, and therefore, Your Worship, there is no need to rush through the agenda tonight. So, thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. We'll be sure to catch the highlights, and the Leafs came out with the right side of the first contest, so we'll see how tonight goes. Right. We've seen that script before. And thank you for those updates on the county business. And it's always an issue as we age, whether it's the forgetfulness or the inability to remember our glasses, read the glasses. So both are telling us something, I'm sure. That brings us to Councillor McLeod.
Thank you so much. I just have noticed that there is an update on our Engage Collingwood page regarding the Pretty River Dike cleanup. That there is a meeting on Wednesday between 5:30 and 7:30, open drop-in kind of question and answer period. It is on MS Teams, so you may have to download that. Anyone who has questions or concerns about this project that's going ahead this fall. Again, it is on our Engage page. You can also get there through the NBCA's website, which is nbca.on.ca, or through the NBCA's Facebook page, or their Twitter feed. And again, it's on MS Teams, so you will have to download MS Teams if you don't have it already.
Thank you, Councillor. And we certainly saw the spillway in action over the weekend with the heavy rains. That brings us to Councillor Madigan.
Nothing for me tonight, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of notes in regard to the Blue Mountain Watershed Trust Foundation. First, congratulations to them for a very successful event held this Saturday, the See the Salmon event, which they've not been able to host for the last 2 years because of COVID. We had presentations and booths from the NVCA, Georgian Bay Forever, and the Pollinator Group. There was food, there was play, and best of all, the salmon cooperated and were running up the Silver Creek. So wonderful day in spite of the rain, excellent turnout, and congratulations for the organization work. And just another reminder that the last of the outdoor presentations of the Be the Change film series will be held tomorrow at Collingwood Brewery at 7 p.m. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Now that we've addressed exhibition hockey, I wanted to address regular season hockey, which starts this Friday at the Eddie Bush. The Collingwood Blues play their first game of the season against Pickering at 7 o'clock. I've made a note that you need your proof of vaccination and a photo ID to get in. I think a few of us on council went to some games this weekend and the past weekend. I'm excited about the team. I think those of you that were at the game feel the same way. They're very fast. They're an exciting team to watch. They have a great goalie this year, and we led the league in attendance, if I recall, prior to the pandemic. So I don't have any doubt that we're going to do it again this season. So I hope to see as full an arena as the regulations allow.
Thank you, Councillor. It was an exciting game on Friday here, and they won when they went back to Huntsville on the weekend. New rink capacity, I think, is around 650. So if people are intending to get to the game, they'll need to come early with the requirements. It's great to have the facilities open, but there are restrictions. And so we want to make sure that we run that as smoothly as possible. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. One announcement very important to council and our community tonight with the upcoming week of such importance in the first ever Federal Truth and Reconciliation Day, September 30th, and all of the acknowledgements, learning and unlearning that we're committed to. As a director of FCM, I am pleased to report that Town of Collingwood's motion urging the federal government to expedite the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action number 72 to 76, which are measures aimed at identifying, commemorating, and honoring the thousands of missing children and unmarked graves that lie in the wake of the legacy of the Indian residential school system. Upon recommendation of the Municipal Finance and Intergovernmental Arrangements Committee, it has been adopted Friday, September 24, 2021 by the FCM board as Category A concurrence and adopted as FCM policy. So similar to our town's previous successful motion, FCM's policy advisors will advocate with the appropriate federal minister or ministers and government officials in this critical matter. So I'm very proud of the town of Collingwood as it continues to make an impact on the national stage and things that are critically important to our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey, and thank you for your efforts and advocacy at the FCM level. It's certainly very good timing with this being National Indigenous Week and our first National Reconciliation Day this Thursday, September 30th. So it's a very important timing and a very important initiative. And I'm going to look to staff, Director Culver, to give us an update on the activities that the town has planned for this Thursday. Dean?
Thank you, Your Worship. So to mark the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, at location where it's possible for us to do so, the town of Collingwood will fly the Canadian flag at half-mast from dawn until dusk. The clock tower will be lit orange, and the Every Child Matters flag will be raised at 11 p.m. at the community flagpole located at the Collingwood Public Library and municipal offices. Permanent poetry installation will be on display at the Awen Gathering Place. A tribute to our stolen spirits was written by Jillian Morris, who is a Collingwood community member, as well as Haudenosaunee, Gahaga, and a member of the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. Interactive trail markers are also going to be in place in Harborview Park along trails that share, and the signs, the markers will share Indigenous stories, resources, and teaching. People are encouraged to use the QR codes on each sign to interactively experience these teachings and information regarding everything from wampum belts as legal instruments that mark treaties, to how Indigenous stories have been told through art, to the spiritual connection that Indigenous peoples have with the land we call home. All of the sites have been located on a virtual story map as well. The installation will be in place from September 30th until October 22nd. The train trail right now actually hosts a story walk featuring On the Trap Line by David A. Robertson and Julie Fleet. That's a story that celebrates Indigenous culture and traditions. And finally, you'll notice town staff, as you go about your business this week, wearing pins and t-shirts sourced directly from the Orange Shirt Society to both recognize the meaning of September 30th and ensure a connection to the origins of Orange Shirt. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Dean. And it's an important day. It's an opportunity for us to reflect, listen, and learn, and so that we as a community can make meaningful steps in the reconciliation process. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind the community that next week on October 7th and 8th is the second annual Collingwood World Summit that takes place in conjunction not only with the town, but UN Habitat and Urban Economy Forum. And the purpose of it, of course, is to share ideas among people who participate across the world on how to achieve sustainable development goals for small towns and cities. And so this year, the themes are housing, the environment, participation by the public in all these things, and as well, how to benchmark progress. So it's free. I noticed there's a posting on our website, of course, so you can register through Eventbrite and pick and choose what you want to listen to. But I know last year was fascinating, and we have a lot of good local leaders in our community who are speaking this year as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. And we have been working very hard on the program for this year's Habitat and Towns event, and we look forward to next Thursday and Friday, and encourage everyone to join us. It will be very interesting. There should be some very important issues being addressed that will be of interest to all our residents. So thank you for bringing that up. We've covered the table very well. My only announcement is to thank Norma and Larry G and the board members at the Collingwood Lawn Bowling Club. They're celebrating their 35th anniversary this year, and they have a spectacular operation over there. We had a great day lawn bowling. I learned, it's my second time, but I certainly learned a lot. We're learning about bias, something that most council members would not know anything about. But I have to give a shout out to their ambassador, Betty, who's 98, and she took up lawn bowling this spring because she decided that tennis was a little too much for her at this point, and she decided to take up lawn bowling. So it just shows us that we can all lawn bowl. And with that, that brings us to item 6, deputations. And we have item 6.1, a message on behalf of Carolynn, Sylvia, and Herb Jr. Wilson. I believe this is a taped message, and I will pass it over to, I don't know who's, Clerk Amos, make some introductory comments, perhaps, please.
Certainly, Your Worship. I believe that the Wilsons unfortunately were unable to attend this evening, but they have provided a very thoughtful message that they did want to share with council based on the staff report and recommendations that were approved at the last meeting. So we'll play that right now.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Mayor Saunderson, Council, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to present our victim impact statement in the untimely death of our father, Herbert Alexander Wilson. June 17, 1947, Herbert Alexander Wilson and Yvonne Doris Sheffield were married in the British Methodist Episcopal Church on 7th Street in Collingwood. They began a family which included Herb Jr., Sylvia, and myself, Carolyn. After 8 short years, Herbert Wilson was killed while on the job as foreman with the town of Collingwood. He was a devoted husband, a dedicated father, a faithful community leader, efficient employee, and a friend to all. Herbert Wilson was a member of the British Methodist Episcopal Church in Collingwood, a Sunday school teacher, and a mentor for adults and youth. He was a member of the Prince Hall and Scenic City No. 2 Masonic Lodge of Ontario and jurisdiction. While in World War II, he served with the medical division overseas. Our father enrolled in several academic and training courses. And prior to working for the town of Collingwood, he sailed on the Great Lakes, was self-employed, but also worked on various jobs around town. Herbert served the municipality for over 9 years. March 29, 1955.
Are we able to get the video back? Sarah,
Our
do we have-
apology, yeah, our apologies, Your Worship.
Was experienced.
There we go.
Our house was not finished. Our back door, our windows, and our porch all needed repair and were still under construction. Our mother had no income and now had to raise 2 little children and a newborn baby of 3 months and carry all the household responsibilities. Our father had prepared for our future and had insurance on himself and our family. And on Herb Jr. and I, we had Junior Jubilee policies for a 20-year endowment for education. It was an investment for the children. We had group policies, and our father had a pension planned through work. However, things changed. The only financial result for our mother was a small monthly compensation check. It did not cover our food, our clothing, the utility bills, the oil bill, school outings, or property taxes. Mom went out to work. She picked apples, and she worked in several nursing homes, took accounting courses. And my brother and I, when we were older, we worked on farms, local farms. However, our grandparents, our uncles, and our aunts, they fed us and they helped us to survive. In closing, we often wondered why our father persevered through all the hardships of racial abuse and social injustice which were placed in his life. Thought about it. He faced them because he knew his life mattered. It mattered to his wife, his 3 children, his parents, the in-laws, his brothers and sisters, and his nieces and nephews. Our father's life mattered to the Black community and to his friends throughout the town. It mattered then as much as it matters today. Submitting on behalf of my brother Herb Jr., my dear sister Sylvia, and myself, Carolyn Wilson. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to Sylvia, Carolyn, and Herb Jr. for that moving tribute to their father and story, the background of that incident. Council, are there any questions or comments on the presentation? Seeing none, we'll move on then to item 7.1, which is the update on water capacity and land use planning study. And I'll ask CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think that there is a deck that's coming up, and I will take the opportunity to say how moving I found that video. And there are some supporting reports in the agenda today that I hope Council will take a good look at and approve per the staff recommendation. And I know you'll have a chance to talk about it at that time. This is a routine update that we have been doing each week, and if we could get please to the next slide. Council has asked us to make sure that they, and in turn, anyone in the public that's interested, has an update every single week that there's a meeting of council or a standing committee until our interim control bylaw is lifted. And so we do have updates from all the departments on the items that council asked us to include, including the ones in the bullet points on your screen. Next slide, please. The situation hasn't changed, although there's some good news in the update today. We do have a water supply that's safe and available. Council has taken a proactive and transparent approach to seek further capacity. Everything from maximizing the chlorine and having it checked upon, and to transparently pause development until we understood what was happening. And there'll be some updates in this deck. And water that doesn't use more water, work that doesn't use more water, such as most residential renovations and additions, can continue. So if you're the member of the public or a developer and you want to know more, there's information on the town's website, and you can always call the building department to get advice on your specific initiative to make sure that things that should go forward, they can go forward. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about this in 2 updates. The first one will be about the water itself. Next slide. So there's been quite a lot happening on the water treatment plant expansion. There is a report for council tonight that was presented at a recent committee meeting. about putting in place some interim ultraviolet disinfection. And that will, in fact, re-even out the summer and winter water available, so that we can have the same amount of water available year round. It does bring a substantial number of single development unit equivalents online, somewhere in between the 7 to 800 or just over 800 units. There is some cost sharing that's set out in the report itself. Some costs that simply bring the summer and winter back to the summer levels have been allocated to Collingwood. And the intention is that Collingwood will use that capacity. And as well, there are some elements that can be reused in the expansion of the plant. It doesn't increase the cost of the new plant, but we can include it in the cost of the plant because we are reusing the UV disinfection. And any other municipalities that sign on for cost sharing the new plant will cost share that portion of the cost. So the UV disinfection proposal submissions are being reviewed right now. We've already gone through a transparent process for procurement on those. So anyone who was offering those type of services, the town has received their proposals. And we've had a half-day meeting to talk about the site plan and architectural design and, addition or continuation of outdoor bathrooms and meeting rooms and things like outdoor educational components and how those would fit in. And the last sub-bullet there, I think, is quite an interesting one. Director Slama and her team and the consultants are about to issue a pre-qualification request for proposals for general contractors. So what this means is that we will get a number of general contractors who may be interested in actually constructing the plant. So that's quite a bit of work, probably over 50 million, maybe over 60 million of work. We'll get them on board quite early to advise us on our design as it progresses, so that we know what is easy and maybe what is not so easy to build, so we get the most advantageous design we can. It's really an innovative approach that's been developed by the team. The third-party review of chlorine addition continues. It's taken a little longer than we thought, but at council's request, we're going to make sure that we've maximized the amount of water that we can get from chlorine and are doing it in a safe way. We had a very successful meeting with Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks with the Assistant Deputy Minister and a number of directors on September 23rd. It was very, very positive. They gave us some information about what we could pre-submit, the types of approvals that we needed to get, and even made some suggestions on how we may be able to get a bit more capacity out of our current infrastructure. I felt it was very positive. And we have a meeting coming up on the 29th with the local district of the ministry and our partner municipalities who use Collingwood water. And we are awaiting the county's consultant on wastewater and wastewater review. That's RV Anderson, to confirm a date with municipalities along the pipeline that runs currently from Collingwood to New Tecumseh around their interest in water supply going forward. Next slide, please. So this is our time plan. There haven't been any updates since the last week. We do have the potential for advanced disinfection shown on the left side, second thing from the top, that pending council's decision tonight could be put in place for winter 2022 to 2023. And as well, there was an ask that staff look at a potential additional filtration and capacity on a temporary basis. And there is a report in progress that will come to council targeting October to look at if there's any other options for additional capacity prior to the delivery of the full expanded plant. Everything else remains on track. Next slide, please. So the remaining water supply that we have today, the cumulative summary is provided in this little chart, and it was updated as of the 3rd of September. So the remaining allocation that we have is 495 single development units. And if you look at how much a single development unit uses, that equivalents out to 447 meters cubed per day. Now, pending the decision made by council tonight, that amount may be increased once the UV treatment is installed. So not immediately, once it's installed. And we would then have the remaining summer amount, which is the bottom row of the this chart, when we would go from just under 500 single development units to having about 1,285 single development units available for allocation within the municipality. And there's a note that I haven't been mentioning a lot as we went through, but Fisherfield, Sunset Point restaurants and the Awen splash pad are not included in the reduction of SDUs except when we look at the summer amounts, because of course we don't use those in the winter. Next slide, please. The land use planning policy is the second of the two updates. So this is our planning side of making sure we can allocate water appropriately. Next slide. The land use planning policy study, this has not been updated since last week, and we're right around the end of September. So you'll see that the individual discussions with council, and if you have really good eyes, you could see that was line item 5B, are set up to be actually last week, but I know that they're continuing into this week and possibly even the first week in October. So there'll be conversations with each council member. And after that, in October, we are looking at meeting with council to review version 1, starting to get out into our development community and our public on track as we had intended. Next slide, please. So we did have the steering committee workshop. It was one of the X's on the previous slide with, that's the staff steering committee. It was a really wonderful workshop, and we spent an hour or two with the consultant, and they had gone over what they'd seen in their research with other municipalities for water allocation. So they have a little set of key findings I won't go through in detail, but basically there were things like, how does it link to the official plan? How is water typically allocated and managed? And once it's provided to any given development, it is committed for how long? And how do we keep some tension in the system to ensure that the allocation is used in a timely manner? Because if one person can't go forward, in a timely manner, then how can we let someone else go forward and just put that person back in the queue? Next slide, please. I'm just going to let people know once again that if you applied for an exemption, council made its last decisions in July and you would have been notified. And I did want to point out as well, the exemptions process is just to get us through this study period. So once the study is done at the end of the year and implemented, hopefully earlier in 2022, pending council's approval of the recommendations, the water will then be managed according to the findings of the study. Next slide. And here's all the decisions that we've had to date for water applications and exemptions. And you can see they're relatively evenly distributed across the geography of Collingwood. Next slide. If you have been granted an exemption, you can continue through the planning process and get a building permit, and you can talk to the planning department if you have any planning decisions left for your project. And if you didn't get an exemption, we will still continue to work through planning applications, but we won't bring that planning decision to council unless they grant an exemption for the project to move forward. Next slide. So the building statistics as of September 24th, you'll see the numbers are given for 2021 in the main number, and in brackets, you'll see where we were a year ago in 2020. So our building application permits, applications received, not permits given, the first subline is 710. And we were at 776 last year at this time. And you'll see that we're more or less on par. We were a little farther ahead with occupancy permits last year, but we're not trailing too far behind where we were in the building statistics in 2020, which of course was also a COVID year, but not an interim control bylaw year. Next slide, please. And we were asked last week to report back, and we're happy to have had the chief building official provide us with some statistics. Of all of the exempted projects, 11 of them have building permits issued, which is about 27%. 5 more have sent their building permit applications in, and 25 projects have not yet approached the town for building permits, so 61%. So with the development that council has approved through the exemption process, we still have quite a bit more construction activity that could be taking off through the second half of 2021. And I believe that's the update for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CAO Skinner. Council, any questions or comments arising out of the report? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to the CAO. Among the, will we be giving those individuals or projects that were granted an exemption a deadline to make application for their building permits so that if they are not intending to proceed in the short term, we can perhaps make way for others?
CAO.
This is thank you through you, your worship, to Councillor Doherty. I think that our new strategic advisor, past interim director Glenn, had been looking into this item with our legal team, and I would turn it over to him, please.
Okay.
Through you, your worship. The question around sunsetting is something that we really can't do. What we have done is we provided them an exemption from the interim control bylaw, what puts them each application back into the normal planning regime. So it's really up to them to come and pull a permit. We don't have the ability under the Planning Act or the Municipal Act to establish a sunset provision for the exemption bylaw.
Thank you for that. Any follow-up, Councillor Doherty?
No, it surprises me that that tool is not available under the acts, but certainly that satisfies my question for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod.
Thanks so much, and thank you for that that last second to last slide, Director Skinner. That is information that I too was very interested in, because it seemed as though there was so many people who were so upset about the interim control bylaw. I thought they would be pulling permits the minute that they got their exemptions, but 61% have not. Can you tell me, when you say about building permits though, how many dwelling units that is? Because I know that I think we gave exemptions for 314 dwelling units. Use, I think, was where we were at, and just wonder what those permits equate to.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that.
Who would like to take that question? Past Director Glenn.
Through your worship, I'd have to check with the building inspector to equate the number of permits or the number of units equated to each permit. So if I could have the indulgence of council to report back to Councillor McLeod, I certainly would do that.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councillor?
No, that's just pure interest.
Peggy's got her hand up. Go ahead, Director Slamma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, it's not related. It's something different, not related to Councillor McLeod's question, in case she had anything else.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right. Go ahead then, please, Peggy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to offer some clarification on one of the items that CAO Skinner spoke about under the water, which is the interim UV disinfection and the report that's in front of council tonight for consideration. In the report, we did note a couple of items, and there's lots of moving parts. So I think probably maybe something just got mixed up in the communication, lots of moving parts with this project. But in the report this evening, you'll see that there will be an additional cost to move forward with the interim UV disinfection. Some of the components will be used in the new plant, but because we do have to do some retrofitting, there are some costs that we need to just absorb to have that project go forward. And the other item I wanted to clarify was what has been presented in the report this evening is that the interim UV would restore our deficit of winter capacity, and we would use that. We would use the additional approximately 700 cubic meters or units to support Collingwood's development. So right now we have presented that Collingwood would pay for those, pay for the additional costs, and we would use the units and the capacity that comes from that interim measure. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for that clarification, Director Slama. CEO Skinner, I saw you did have your hand up there. I don't know if it was relative to this discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to point out in answer to Councillor McLeod's question that the chart from the deck today, it was slide 7, did talk about the equivalent single dwelling units that were committed through exemptions, but it doesn't actually talk about which of those might be, condos versus something else. So the actual number of dwelling units might be different than the single development units of water used. But if you needed us to be more specific, I would just echo past Director Glenn's comments that we could follow up on actual, livable units, if that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful to get a sense of the relativity of how we are in terms of the permits issued and the water available. So that information would be appreciated, please. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Seeing none, that brings us to item 8, the consent agenda. And the resolution reads that council herein receive the general consent agenda, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are those of the authors and are not verified or approved as being correct. And we have 6 items on the consent agenda tonight. 8.1, Clock Tower Illumination, Prostate Cancer Awareness. 8.2, Proclamation National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, September 30. Clock Tower will be illuminated orange. Town hall flags will be lowered to half staff, and Every Child Matters flag will be raised at the community flagpole at the library. 8.3, Proclamation International Trigeminal Neuralgia Day. I hope I said that right. The clock tower will be illuminated blue from October 7th to 14th. 8.4, Proclamation Dyslexia Awareness Month, October 2021, and the clock tower will be illuminated red from October 18 to 20th. 8.5, various redesignation correspondence redesignation of Cranberry Golf Course. And 8.6, Marlene Grant potential redevelopment of Johnson Trust Apartments. I will look first for a mover and a seconder to adopt the consent, to receive the consent agenda, Councillor Madigan and Councillor Berman. And then I will ask if there are items to be pulled. So first, to voting to receive the consent agenda. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any items that council would like to pull tonight? I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on then to Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the last item, 8.6.
All right. Just before you go, I'll make sure that there's no other items to be pulled. We were slow on the cards there. So seeing no other, go ahead then, please, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if it might be appropriate for you as mayor to respond in writing to Ms. Grant, just to confirm that no proposals have been brought forward to council at all with respect to this property as of yet, and no decision has been made.
I'll look to staff. We can refer that to staff. Certainly that's a live issue, and the housing task force is dealing with some of these issues, and I'll look to Clerk Almas for a comment on that.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. I've also been in correspondence with Ms. Grant regarding her concerns and suggested, obviously, she's aware of where the property sits right now and the work of the Affordable Housing Task Force, and staff have confirmed with her that we would notify her once the Affordable Housing Task Force makes their recommendations, should she wish to have further discussions with the standing committee or council at that time. But we could definitely follow up and advise her that the information is received and confirm in writing that there's no proposal yet for the property.
That's great. Thank you very much.
And we'll certainly make sure that the public is made aware of all of our discussions ongoing on this item, and we thank Ms. Grant for her correspondence. Seeing no other items to be pulled, we'll then move on to item 9, which is the standing committee report. This is a fairly lengthy resolution since it was a lengthy meeting, so I will work my way through it. The recommendation reads as follows: that council receive the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee report from its meeting held September 13, 2021, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. C 2021-16, assumption of road for public use, Day Drive, and the recommendation is to pass a bylaw to assume a portion of Day Drive. P 2021-23, part lot control exemption bylaw, Eden Oak, round bracket McNabb, and bracket Indigo Estates subdivision block 290. And the recommendation is to pass a part lot control exemption bylaw to allow the creation of 2 lots. P 2021-24, zoning bylaw amendment to remove a holding zone symbol and authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement, round bracket block 2, Balmoral Village, Royal Windsor and bracket. And the recommendation is to pass a zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding symbol and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for Royal Windsor residential development. P 2021-25, proposed pet store, 2 Old Mountain Road zoning bylaw amendment. The recommendation is to pass a zoning bylaw amendment for 2 Old Mountain Road. P 2021-26, amendments to site plan control bylaw for minor adjustments. And the recommendation is to pass an amending bylaw to site plan control bylaw number 2010-82 as amended. P 2021-27, official plan update, evaluation of landowner redesignation requests. And the recommendation is to direct staff to give consideration to the recommended minor landowner redesignation requests through the official plan update and respond to all landowners who made a request for redesignation through the official plan update process. P 2021-29, draft plan approval extension request, Trails of Collingwood, round bracket Helen Court Homes and bracket. The recommendation is to approve a 3-year extension of draft approval for the Trails of Collingwood plans of subdivision. P 2021-13, Hurontario Crosswalk review. And the recommendation is to approve the redesign of the Hurontario Crosswalk and to proceed as possible with the conversion to a mid-block pedestrian crossing. P 2021-14, execution of multi-year governance agreement, Metrolinx Transit Procurement Initiative. And the recommendation is to pass a bylaw to authorize the execution of a multi-year governance agreement with Metrolinx. PW 2021-15, Environmental Services 2021 Mid-Year Operations Update. And the recommendation is to receive the report for information. P 2021-16, Water Treatment Plant Disinfection Upgrades. And the recommendation is to proceed with option 1 and direct staff to include revised budget requirements to support the installation of UV disinfection at the existing water treatment plant as part of the 2022 capital budget. 2021-21 request for a potential review of materials and design guidance in the downtown Collingwood Heritage Conservation District. The recommendation is to defer to the October 12th, 2021 Development and Operations Services Standing Committee meeting. And the final item is Collingwood Heritage Committee meeting minutes, July 19th, 2021, and special Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes, August 9th, 2021. And the recommendation is that the minutes be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved, except resolution HER 57-2021 passed August 9, 2021. These items are all together, council, because they were approved unanimously by the committee. I'm going to have the motion moved by Chair Hamlin and seconded by Vice Chair Jeffrey, unless there's concerns on either of their parts. So I will ask if there are any items that council wishes to pull from these because they would like to see this council pursue a different or change in direction from the recommendation. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Worship. I have questions in regard to 2 of these staff reports. It may or may not change my support of any of the recommendations, but it would be contingent on the answers, if I may.
All right, Councillor Doherty. So what I'm going to ask you to do is identify the reports and we will sever those and then we'll deal with the main motion and come back to those 2 items so you can ask your questions. Which items are they?
Thank you. So it's P 2021-29 draft plan approval extension request for Trails of Collingwood, and PW 2021-14 execution of multi-year governance agreement with Metrolinx Transit.
All right then. So I'm going to sever those from the main motion and we will come back to those to address your questions. Are there any other items, council? Seeing none, then I will call the vote on the main motion, which is severing the 2 that we just heard from. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Doherty, why don't you ask your questions with respect to P 2021-29 draft plan approval extension request, Trails of Collingwood.
Thank you. In the past, I have not supported request for extension of this draft plan approval for this particular development for 2 reasons. First of all, because in general, I do not think that we should be extending draft plan approvals indefinitely, that these should have sunset clauses. So that is the first reason. And the second reason is in regard to an element of this particular application, and that is the fact that the lands contain contaminated soils, and I was previously unsatisfied with the proposals that had been put forth by the developer as to how those soils would be treated. However, in the case of this particular extension and contingent on one of the questions, I am likely to support this in that, well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, that based on the acknowledgement of our affordable housing crisis, I feel that the densification that this particular development is offering may offer solutions to some of the issues that we're faced with right now. Secondly, there are a number of new conditions that have been added to these conditions for approval relative to the conditions for water allocations and timing, urban design controls, traffic calming, and active transportation infrastructure. And I'm very supportive of the addition of these conditions. But I want to ask a question in particular in regard to condition number 42, which is the requirement for environmental assessment and potentially multiple levels of investigation of environmental assessment on these, and I presume it is in regard to the contaminated soils. And my question through you, I guess, to Director Valentine, would council be made aware ultimately of the results of these studies and any proposals that the developer will have relative to either the removal or the mitigation of these contaminated soils?
Thank you, Councillor. And I'll look to Director Valentine and her, I think, first week or beginning the second week of your time at the helm there. So go ahead, please, Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, this is day 6 for me. So I will defer this answer to the previous interim director, Glenn, who has the background on this particular file and has prepared an answer in discussion with the report writer.
Thank you. Past Director Glenn.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Doherty. Yes, Council will get an opportunity to review the findings and the recommendations with regards to soil contamination and the assessment and containment in 2 ways. One is that they would have to satisfy the town prior to registration of the subdivision. And 2 is council will have to remove an H symbol, and that report would come back to council with the recommending bylaw for removal of the H.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councillor Doherty?
No, thank you. I'm satisfied with that. Sure. So
Right.
Can I move on to PW 2021-14?
No, I think what we'll do, Councillor, is we'll first pass this one, and then we'll move on to the second one. So now that my clock has stopped gonging, the resolution is that council receive the Development Operations Services Standing Committee report from the meeting September 13, 2021, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within report P 2021-29 draft plan approval extension request, Trails of Collingwood, round bracket Helen Court Homes. And the recommendation is to approve a 3-year extension of draft approval for the Trails of Collingwood plans of subdivision. And that has been moved by Chair Hamlin and seconded by Vice Chair Jeffrey. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Now, Councillor Doherty, go ahead with respect to PW 2021-15. No, 14. Execution of multi-year governance agreement, Metrolinx Transit Procurement Initiative.
Thank you. My question is in regard to our future purchases through this shared program. And my understanding from the report is that Metrolinx are evaluating the efficacy of electric buses in a number of communities, and will be coming forward with recommendations and hopefully with potential suppliers for members to avail themselves of in the future. So I am hoping that our plan is to be acquiring electric buses in our next round of purchases. And I just wanted to see how the anticipated completion of that evaluation by Metrolinx jives with our purchasing cycle for new buses.
Director Slama.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Doherty. Yes, so we are looking to purchase some more buses. I believe it's 3 more buses over the next 5 years. And certainly what Metrolinx is going to be looking at and putting together with respect to the ability for transit authorities to purchase electric buses will help us, because it will guide us into these, suppliers. It will guide us through, RFPs, we'll have this collective knowledge. We'll be able to leverage this collective knowledge to our benefit as we look towards the purchase of electric buses. As a corporation, the town, there are some elements to electrifying our transit fleet that we do need to consider. And so I see as that day gets closer, staff would present a report to council, which just lays out some of the elements that we need to plan for and budget for if we want to move towards an electrification of our transit fleet.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councillor Doherty?
No, thank you. I will look forward to hearing from staff how we will be accommodating electric transportation vehicles in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, and through to Councillor Doherty. We did have that conversation at the committee. And we talked about that. And the other point I brought up wasn't just about the new buses, but the importance of the community, hopefully in a bulk purchasing environment, to be able to retrofit our existing inventory instead of waiting just to buy new ones to bring online. So we did have both of those discussions.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, then we will vote on this item, and the resolution will read: the council received the Development Operations Standing Committee report from the meeting held September 13, 2021, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within report PW 2021-14, execution of multi-year governance agreement, Metrolinx Transit Procurement Initiative, and the recommendation is to pass a bylaw to authorize the execution of a multi-year governance agreement with Metrolinx. That again has been moved by the Chair Hamlin, and Vice Chair Jeffrey. So all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. It brings us to item 9.1.2. Deputy Mayor, that's the matter that you had the conflict with. And the resolution reads that resolution HER-57-2021 of the August 9, 2021 Heritage Committee meeting regarding the issuance of a heritage permit for 12 4th Street West be deferred to a future development and operations services standing committee meeting. And that will be moved by Chair Hamlin and seconded by Vice Chair Jeffrey. Any questions or comments on that item, Council? Seeing none, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Clerk, if we can get the Deputy Mayor back in. We're at item 9.1.3. Deputy Mayor is back. So the resolution is regarding a number of bylaws. So the resolution reads, be it resolved that the following bylaws be enacted and passed this 27th day of September 2021. Bylaw number 2021-60 being a bylaw to assume and dedicate certain highways and municipal services. Bylaw number 2021-61 being a bylaw to exempt a portion of land from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act, round bracket block 290 Eden Oak end bracket. Bylaw number 2021-62 being a bylaw under the provisions of sections 34 and 36 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, chapter P13 as amended, round bracket Balmoral Village Block 2, Royal Windsor end bracket. Bylaw number 2021-63 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan control agreement between Reed's Heritage Homes, round bracket Laura Bay end bracket Limited, Harbor Edge Mortgage Investment Corporation, Laurentian Bank of Canada, and the Corporation of the Town of Collingwood, round bracket Balmoral Village Block 2, Royal Windsor end bracket. Bylaw number 2021-64 being a bylaw under the provisions of sections 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, chapter P13 as amended, round bracket 2 Old Mountain Road end bracket. Bylaw number 2021-65 being a bylaw to implement amendments to the site plan control bylaw for the Town of Collingwood, number 2010-82, delegating a certain authority to the Director of Planning Services as amended. And finally, bylaw number 2021-66, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a multi-year governance agreement for joint transit procurements facilitated by Metrolinx 2019-2024. And that again will be moved by Chair Hamlin and seconded by Vice Chair Jeffrey. Any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. And this brings us to staff reports. Item 10.1, CAO 2021-12, interim control bylaw number 2021-24, correction of exemption legal description, Summit View Phase 2A. CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our planning, building and bylaw director Valentine is going to walk us through this report, why it's needed and why I support that you vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Valentine.
Thank you, Your Worship, and CAO Skinner. With the respect to the report before you today, the matter is relatively straightforward, a correction of a clerical error to a legal description of lands within the Summit View registered plan of subdivision as an exempted project under the interim control bylaw. So the purpose of the correction is to ensure that the intent of the previous decision of this council to exempt only 89 units in phase 2 of the development is maintained. I would note that the applicant does concur with this correction, as it would accurately reflect the legal description of the lands where the 89 building permits would be available, and the town solicitor reviewed both the report and the amending bylaw. So although the correction is minor in nature, the report does assist to maintain a high level of transparency for any matter that's associated with the interim control bylaw by making this council and the public aware of the updated legal description. That concludes my report summary, and happy to answer any questions should there be any through you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Summer. What we'll do is we'll get the resolution on the floor, and then if there's any questions, we will direct those. And the resolution reads, it's staff report CAO 2021-12, interim control bylaw number 2021-24, correction of exemption description, Summit View Phase 2 be received, and further that the legal description for the Summit View Phase 2A lands exempted from the interim control bylaw on July 19, 2021, and as contained on the amended Schedule A to interim control bylaw number 2021-24 be revised in accordance with information contained in this report. And further, that bylaw number 2021-67 being a bylaw to amend the legal description for the aforementioned Summit View Phase 2A lands as contained in Schedule A to interim control bylaw number 2021-24 as amended be enacted and passed this 27th day of September 2021. I get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Berman and Councillor McLeod. Councillor, are there any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. You know, look at the clerk, Sarah, we don't need to pass a bylaw to, with respect to this. It's automatically going to amend the bylaw that's already been passed.
Correct. We've actually amended the staff report resolution to do the motion to include the enactment of the bylaw. We've actually vetted that through the solicitor as well, and we only require one resolution.
Good. Thank you. All right, Council, this brings us then to item 10, which is motion, or maybe that's 11 now. Motions. So 11.1 is the Waste Management CART Program Solution for BIA. This is Deputy Mayor Hall's motion. I'll pass it over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I tabled this last week with the intent of bringing it forward this evening, and with an opportunity to meet with the county staff, the new waste collection contractor, and members of the BIA, myself and others. We're hoping to have an in-person meeting here within the town, and it would be an opportunity to continue the dialogue and continue to move forward without having to take this step tonight. Looking at having that meeting potentially the 4th, 5th, or 6th of October, so that's a week today. And pursuant to that, then we would revisit this potentially on the 18th if necessary. Or with a positive outcome, potentially I would just simply bring forward an update. So with that, I would request that this simply be deferred to our first council meeting of October, which is Monday, October the 18th.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, and good luck with those meetings. It's a good opportunity to try and hash out these programs or issues. So can I get a seconder for the Deputy Mayor's request for deferral? I've got Councillor Berman. And there's no comments or questions on a deferral motion, so I'm going to call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 11.2, options to naturalize the Pretty River watercourse. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a similar request to our Deputy Mayor insofar as I would be seeking a deferral of this matter to next Monday for our SIC meeting. Following the presentation from the NVCA last Monday, I've had an opportunity to exchange some emails with the senior engineer who did the presentation. And I'm hoping to get some final answers this week on the matters I raised, and it may mean that this motion won't need to proceed.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to look to the clerk. If we defer this to an SIC meeting, when does it become effective? Sarah, the vote would have to come back before council, would it not?
Excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to all members of council, the NVCA matters actually generally report through the DNO, so most likely would hit the DNO agenda, but regardless, out of any of the standing committees, the earliest council meeting will be October the 18th.
Okay. So as long as that's satisfactory to Councillor Hamlin?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll look for a seconder then. Deputy Mayor. All right. Then I'll call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion tonight, council? Seeing none, that brings us to item 13. And I think you raised your issues in community announcements. Is there anything further you had for us tonight, Deputy Mayor?
There isn't, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilor, are there any questions on county business relating to the announcements made earlier? Nope. All right, then. That brings us to item 14.1, old or deferred business. Is there any old or deferred business tonight, council? Seeing none, that brings us to other business. Any other business tonight? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Briefly, just to remind members of council, and just as important for council members as staff members, FCM Sustainable Communities Conference is scheduled virtually for October 19th to the 21st. It'll never be more reasonable or easier to participate in such a valuable conference. I think it's no more than $275 for FCM members, which we are. And their conference program is available, but some very excellent workshops in helping with sustainability for our community. So that's available. And then secondly, I have a question under other business. When a member of council, I just don't know how we're billed through the MVCA, if there's any extra cost, but to have members of council dialoguing directly with staff members of the NBCA. I just wanted to ask if that's normal in our protocol, or if it's problematic at all in terms of the flow of information through staff. And I guess that question would probably go to the CAO.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll look to CAO Skinner or perhaps Clerk Almas, whoever wants to take that. I think you're up, Sonia.
I would take a first start at this, and then I'd actually wouldn't mind if the clerk could also have a conversation. Just first starting with how the NVCA bills us. We do pay a levy to the NVCA, and that levy typically covers the most of the work that the NVCA does. And however, we have a separate contract with NVCA to provide council with natural heritage information. And because it is council's accountability, not NVCA's, to make decisions on sort of the green natural heritage elements of a development going forward, although the NVCA provides separate advice. And under that contract, we don't pay separately, but the users pay for their permit applications, for their applications, and it is somewhat subsidized from our levy. We do have very specific conversation item. It was a council staff communications policy for council members conversing with staff. And that is that they would talk either to the CAO or a director with the CAO CC'd. But to my knowledge, and this is where I'll need the clerk to step in, that hasn't been formally extended to other entities such as maybe the library board or the NVCA or other types of arm's length organizations. I do know that when I was a CAO of a conservation authority in a previous position, we did sometimes have council members come and ask the it was GSCA at that time, staff questions, and we would provide factual information to the extent that we could possibly, but try to direct folks who were on active decisions to maybe talk with their representatives and or through the representatives bring items to the board. But I have to say that the governance then may have been a little bit less developed than the governance we have here at Collingwood today. So unless the clerk almost has a comment, that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor?
Yeah, I should just clarify.
So just hold on a sec there, Councillor Hamlin. I'm going to go to Councillor Jeffrey. I saw your card and I will come to you. Councillor Jeffrey, is there any follow-up on that?
No, thank you for the response, because there's a concern with all of our liabilities, and I know there has been a spirit of cooperation going on between the NVCA and trying to educate the council members on what their project was, knowing that it's their project, not the town of Collingwood, but it is impacting us in a great way. And I just always worry about when we go outside the conversation around staff, that we need everything back on the table, and we need to be working to the advantage of the town of Collingwood. So that was my only concern with respect to the comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamlin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should have clarified, but as my correspondence to Mr. Hartley was an email that I copied to the CAO at the Conservation Authority and to our own CAO and to Marion McLeod, who of course is the chair of the NVCA. So following that, I had a clarification question from Mr. Hartley on something I had asked, so I responded directly, but I don't think he copied everybody on that. So now I'm just waiting to hear back on all these issues. So I am following the protocol as I understand it to have been laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jeffrey.
Sure, and just one more follow-up to that comment. I guess it's problematic in that all of council don't get the responses or the benefit of that ongoing dialogue. So I think that can be problematic in terms of our understanding of our protocol. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamlin, last comment on this, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I'm happy to share whatever responses I get from the senior engineer with council, if that's the wish of council.
I think where we have slippages with third-party entities that don't know our internal protocols, the answers that we get from staff don't get copied to everyone. So we can probably look at ways that we might be able to address that moving forward. All right, council, any other business tonight? Seeing none, that brings us to item 15, which is our in-camera motion. And the resolution reads as follows. Whereas the clerk hereby concurs the reasons for the in-camera session have been duly reviewed and considered, and the matters are authorized under the exception provisions to conduct a closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act prior to proceeding into closed session. Therefore, be it resolved that this council proceeds in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to 1, the security of the property of the town or local board, items B and C. 2, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including town or local board employees, items A and C. 3, labor relations or employee negotiations, item A. 4, the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, item B. And 4, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, and that is item B. And I may have jumped over an item. I think it was labor relations or employee negotiations, item A. And the items for discussion tonight are A, QP negotiations, B, water agreement negotiations, and C, water capacity review. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Madigan and Councillor Berman. Questions or comments, council? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And with that, I'll look to the clerk to confirm that we will be doing the in-camera session on this same feed. We don't need to log out and come back in. All right.
Correct.
So right now, council, it's 6:26, and I'm going to suggest we take a bio break and report back to the in-camera session at 6:43. And we'll see you there. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Your Worship, you're live.
Thank you very much. All right, council, I'll take a motion to rise from in camera and return to open session at 8:32 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councilor Doherty and Councilor Madigan, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor, you had your card up. Is nothing? Okay. All right, so we have the confirmatory bylaw, 16.1. Resolution reads that bylaw number 2021-68 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held September 27, 2021 be enacted and passed this 27th day of September 2021. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Madigan, Councillor Berman. I will call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And there's only one more article of business, and that's the motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, council. It's been a productive meeting. Everyone have a good night.
Night.